Go, 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 go! 155! 155! 156! Go! Debut! Yes, boys! Oh, hell yeah! Behemoth! Behemoth!
Hey guys, Agoni here, and today we're going to be revisiting my favorite boss, Nex AoD. This video will cover the gear and level requirements, roles, and team composition, and we'll give a phase-by-phase breakdown of the encounter. This is meant to be a comprehensive guide, so even after editing, it will still probably end up quite long. If you'd like to skip around, there will be timestamps in the description. Nex AoD is a level 7000 Nihil. She has 3 million life points, attacks with melee and magic, and is immune to stuns and poison. Her unique drops include the Appraisal Codex, which unlocks the Tier 99 Ancient Curses, the Tier 92 Magic Dual Appraisal Set, 4 chests which unlock cosmetic battle robes, and the pet Reeves. The estimated earnings at AoD are said to be around 80 mil per hour for 7-man teams that can average 20 kills or more per hour. Since AoD is considered an in-game boss, at least at the time of recording, you are somewhat expected to have decent stats and gear. Therefore, I'll give my suggestions first, which will be somewhat higher than the actual minimum requirements, which I'll give after. My suggestions are max combat stats, 115 or higher herblore, 120 invention, tier 90 or higher weapons, tier 92 armor, and disruption shield. With 115 herblore, you'll be able to make every potion you need for AoD. This includes general renewals and elder overloads. Similarly, with 120 invention, you'll have access to every PVM perk you'll need. Accuracy is very important at AoD, which is why I recommend tier 90 or higher weapons. You may be wondering why the tier 92 armor though. On one hand, it's less about stat bonuses and more about cost efficiency. Tier 92 armor is cheaper to maintain than its tier 90 variants. Just be aware of the death cost. Furthermore, meleeing without tier 92 armor can be very difficult at AoD, and I do not recommend it. Now, that aside, at a minimum, you'll want max defensive stats with level 92 or higher defense, 95 or higher prayer for the basic curses, 96 or higher summoning for Ripper Demons, 106 herblore or higher for elder overloads, as the drum renewals can be assisted, tier 80 armor, and basic PVM perks. Now let's take a look at the roles and how 7-man teams are typically constructed. FYI, I will not be covering B1 or B2 in this video. The standard team consists of a base, a free roll, a chinner, and 4 minion tanks. The base is responsible for debuffing and vulning Nex at different points throughout the fight. They're also responsible for helping minion tanks during phase 2, and tanking Nex for the duration of the fight. The free roll's responsibilities are to help the MTs during phase 2 and phase 1 if we respawn, and to back up minion tank in case one of the MTs dies. The chinner is responsible for applying the Stasis Warhammer debuff to Nex at the very start of the fight, helping minion tanks during phase 2 and phase 1 if we respawn, killing minions using mech Chinchampas, and to back up base if the base dies. Lastly, the minion tanks are responsible for killing their amalgamation crystals before the time bar runs out, luring minions to the center and tanking them until they're cleared by the chinner. Whoever's assigned the Umbra minion is also responsible for vulning Umbra when he spawns. Alright, so far we've covered the gear, the requirements, and the roles. Now let's get into the encounter and break down the phasing. Before we start, I do want to say that Nex is not a very mechanic-intensive boss, or at least not to the same extent as bosses such as Solak or Telos. With enough damage, nearly all of Nex's specs can be avoided. As you're getting comfortable with the boss, I highly recommend becoming familiar with rotations appropriate to your role. I'm currently working on a separate clan channel that will include guides to role-specific rotations, and if it's up and running by the time this video is released, I will be sure to include a link to it in the description. Okay, so phase 1 starts with Nex at 3 million life points and ends when she reaches 2.1 million life points. The first mechanic you'll face is the Element. This mechanic starts when Nex stops her attack and faces into a random quadrant, jumping into the air. Nex will then cast 3 waves of soft typeless damage into the quadrant she faces, which I call the Element Quadrant. Each wave will deal 3.5k damage. Usually, minion tanks are expected to tank elements, as empty element quadrants increases Nex's enrage stacks by 20. Depending on the team speed, you can usually deal with elements by using Disruption Shield for the first hit, resoing the second, and just eating up for the third. On faster teams, however, you might only have time to disrupt. During the elements, ice will begin to spawn along the cardinal lines, dividing each quadrant. If Nex hasn't phased before the ice completes, Reavers will spawn in each quadrant except for the element quadrant. So in total, 3 Reavers will spawn, each with 50k life points, and will immediately begin walking towards Nex. Each Reaver that reaches Nex will heal her and simultaneously deal damage to everyone in the arena, also adding 3 enrage stacks to Nex. A Reaver at full health will deal 25k damage divided across the team, and heal Nex for 25k life points. So 3 full Reavers will deal a total of 75k damage, or 10.7k per person, assuming no one has died yet. If you expect to get Reavers, place the minion mines in each quad before starting the kill. Each minion tank will place their mines in their quadrant, and the base will mine Cure, the free roll will mine Fumas, and the Chen will mine Glacies. Each set of mines will take 20k off the Reaver's total health. Once the Reaver is spawned, place a bleed on it and continue attacking Nex until she's phased. Once Nex is phased, finish off the Reaver if you have time to. The Chinner and the free roll are expected to help kill the Umber Reaver, since the Umber quad only gets 1 set of mines. The last mechanic of phase 1 is the Shadow Orb. During this mechanic, Nex will throw her arms into the air, and red Shadow Orbs will begin to fall to the ground where each player is positioned. I think there's a total of 3 or 4 of them that fall. Each orb deals 300 typeless damage per tick, and the best way to deal with them is to just let them all fall into one place and then step a square away from them, to avoid covering the arena with these things. Nex will repeat these mechanics until she's brought down to 2.1 million life points. Once Nex reaches 2.1 million life points, she'll become invulnerable and begin summoning her 4 minions, Umbra, Glacies, Cure, and Fumas. She remains invulnerable until she spawns 4 amalgamation crystals, at which point she'll say, "Not just I have mastered the elements, fill the wrath of those who have bent it to their bidding," signaling the start of phase 2. 4 amalgamation crystals will spawn, each with 40,000 life points and a time bar displayed above it. When they spawn, they deal 4,000 damage to anyone standing too closely to them, so stay along the cardinal lines to avoid taking damage. It's really important to kill the amalgamations before the time bar runs out, because if the minion tank fails to kill it in time, a level 1000 minion with 300k life points and increased defense will spawn, instead of a level 750 minion with 150k life points. Moving forward, phase 2 doesn't end with just killing the amalgamations, as you also need to drop Nex's health down to 1.8 million. Phasing Nex actually takes priority over focusing your amalgamation, therefore minion tanks will want to threshold Nex once she's attackable before focusing on their amalgamations. Once Nex is phased, each minion tank will receive help from the other role. The Chinner will help the Umbra and Glacies minion tanks, the base will help the Glacies and Cure minion tanks, and the free roll will help the Umbra and Fumas minion tanks. The base will also revol Nex during this phase. Once the minions spawn, it is then the minion tank's job to correctly lure the minions to the center. Before finishing their amalg, each minion tank wants to position themselves behind the amalg to ensure that the minion aggroes them and not a teammate. Additionally, the Umbra minion tank will need to vuln the Umbra minion when it spawns, to ensure that it dies either first or second. Once the minion tank has aggroed the minion tank will want to surge diagonally across the arena. This should position the minion directly in the center, under Nex. The rest of the team needs to ensure they're positioned along the cardinal lines as to not block the minions from moving to the center. Once the minions are lured, only 1 dot should appear in the center of the minimap, where Nex is standing. If the minion ends up mislured, it falls on the minion tank to re-lure it. Once the minions are centered, the minion tank should then move along the north-south center line for flanking. Nex recycles the same mechanics in phase 1 and phase 2. If her health isn't taken down to 1.8 million life points within up to 14 auto attacks from the start of phase 2, she'll just recycle the elements and shadow orbs. Once Nex reaches 1.8 million life points, she'll become invulnerable again and say, "Understand this, mortals, you know nothing of the power you meddle with." After a brief period, she'll say, "These are the very elements of my creation. This is everything, everything." At this point, Nex will become attackable again, and phase 3 will begin. To complete phase 3, the team needs to kill the minions and damage Nex down to 600k life points. During this phase, the Chinner will equip mech shins to eliminate the minions, while the minion tanks tank them until the Chinner clears them. The minions have adrenaline bars similar to players and cast stuns such as Asphyxiate. How long the minion tank will need to tank the minion depends on whether or not the minion lure was correct and the skill level of the Chinner. To avoid getting stunned, minion tanks may want to anticipate before the minion's adrenaline bar reaches halfway. Nex rotates 3 new mechanics during phase 3, the smoke lines, the smoke pool, and the ice prison. The first phase 3 mechanic will always either be the smoke line or the smoke pool, but never the ice prison. When Nex casts the smoke lines, she will say, "Feel the smoke all around you, let it consume you," before kneeling to the ground. At the same time, 2 players will get a warning box and a message in the chat box stating Nex begins to draw smoke from the east or the north toward you. If you received an east smoke, place it north or south of the center. If you receive the north smoke, place it directly up the center or east away from everyone else. If you're basing, take 2 steps back to the west. Once Nex stands back up, she will do 2 more auto attacks before the smoke appears. The smoke will drop wherever the player was standing during the second auto attack. If you get this mechanic as you phase into 600k, it can be negated. Place north smokes on the east or west walls, and east smokes on the north or south walls, and the smokes won't appear at all. The next phase 3 mechanic to look out for is the smoke pool. When Nex casts the smoke pool, the team will receive a message in the chat box which says Nex casts a thick black smoke towards the center of the arena. Luckily, this mechanic can usually be ignored, as it simply deals 37k damage split evenly across the team. Only when 2 or more teammates have died should this require any attention, in which case the team, minus the base unless the pool is positioned on top of them, should get into the pool and click it. This will deal 14k damage split among everyone in the pool. It's always a good idea to check the arena and your chat box for pools going into phase 4, because if your health is low and you're unaware of the pool, it's an easy way to just get clapped. The last phase 3 mechanic is the Ice Prison, and when she casts this, the targeted player will receive a message stating, "Ice begins to form around your feet, locking you into place, and your screen will freeze over." The Ice player should then freedom and move away from the rest of the team. After a few moments, the player will get a second message, saying, "An icicle falls from the ceiling, locking you into place." After getting the second message, the Ice player only needs to drink the Power Burst of Acceleration, then surge or bladed dive out of it to escape from the prison. This mechanic is one of the easier ones to mess up. If your freedom is on cooldown, type I in the chat to warn the team and give them enough time to get away from the prison's area of effect. Those caught within the prison's area of effect will be stunned and take a 5k hit. Additionally, if you drink your power burst too early, specifically before the second message, you will no longer be able to free yourself from the prison. Either your team will need to free you, or you'll just have to tank the ice, which is done by turning on protect from melee until the ice melts. If you don't protect from melee, the prison will start to deal bleed damage of about 2k per hit. Once Nex's health reaches 600k, phase 4, or the pillar phase, will begin. Nex will now become invulnerable and only attacks with magic for the rest of the fight. The base will lure Nex away from the team to the last pillar while the rest of the team goes to the first pillar and eliminates them in the order in which their corresponding minion had died. So if the minions died in the order of Umbra, Glacius, Kur, Fumus, the base will lure Nex to the Fumus quadrant while the rest of the team goes to the Umbra pillar and then kills the pillars in that order. The Umbra minion tank is responsible for vaulting the first 3 pillars, while the base is responsible for hammering and vaulting Nex and vaulting the last pillar. Each pillar has 200k life points and an effect of its own. The Shadow Pillar, located in the southeast, drops shadow traps beneath players within Nex attack range. If the base properly lures, you shouldn't get these unless you were too slow to move away from Nex after she phases. If you do get them, simply move around until they stop. I think there's 4 of them in total that drop. Also be careful not to drop them under your teammates. The Ice Pillar is located in the northeast corner and freezes and stuns player within Nex's attack range. Affected players' screens will gradually freeze over and eventually be locked in place and be dealt bleed damage. If you see you're going to take one of Nex's autos when going to this pillar, pray protect from magic to avoid getting bound. To avoid getting stunned and taking bleed damage, freedom if your screen starts to freeze over. The Blood Pillar is located in the northwest corner, and it heals Nex the same way that blood spells heal players. Nothing can be done about that, so just ignore it. The Smoke Pillar, which is located in the southwest corner, emits a virus that poisons players and drains their prayer. This can be negated with the style variations of the Overload Potions, Anti-Poison, or sipping a Guthix Rest. Also keep a close eye on your prayer to avoid getting smited. The base usually deals with all of the mechanics, while the rest of the team only deals with the mechanics of the last pillar, which is why you always want Umbra to be first or second. Generally speaking, having Umbra as the last pillar in the order is usually the most chaotic, as teams often struggle to avoid shadowing one another. The only other mechanic during the pillar phase is the insta-kill bomb. The targeted player will get a message saying Nex has marked you to take on the full force of the elements, and a time bar will appear above their head. The player will have until the bar fills up to make their way to the center. Once the bar is filled in the center, the player will receive a message saying the shield blocks most of the damage, but you feel the elements boiling up inside, and then the bar will reset itself. When the second bar fills, a bomb will drop at the location the player was when the bar filled. The bomb will deal 3000 damage every 2 ticks to anyone within its radius. However, the bomb only hits players that are also within Nex's range of attack, so bombs can be placed against the pillar the team is currently attacking unless it's the last pillar. If you do get a bomb at the last pillar, make sure to drop it away from everyone else, and if you do end up dropping it at the last pillar, just make sure to communicate that to your team. Once the last pillar has fallen, Nex will become attackable again. The rest of the kill is pretty straightforward from here. Simply finish off the remainder of Nex's life points and congrats, you've killed Nex. The only mechanic during Zero's phase is the insta-kill bomb, which we've already covered. Make sure you're in the center when the first bar fills, and then just stay away from the team for the second one. The drop positioning goes as follows. The highest DPS will be located in the northwest drop position, the second highest in the center north, third northeast, fourth southwest, fifth south, and sixth in the southeast. The basis drop will always be in the center. Okay, so far we have covered the basics of the boss and have broken down its mechanics phase by phase. Now let's look at a kill all the way through. Right here, Nex starts the elements right about the same time as we phase her. She's also now invulnerable until the amalgamation spawn. The amalgams have spawned and she's attackable again, but watch how we phase Nex before focusing on them. Here you can see the MTs wait for their minions to spawn and tag them before luring them to the center. The Chinner has cleared the minions at this point, and the pillar order reads Umber Glacius Fomus Truor. At this point, I lure Nex away from the rest of the team to the last pillar while the others start finishing off the pillar. Here you can also see the shadow traps under me from the Umber pillar. I also just got the one-hit bomb, so I work my way towards the center to clear the first bar. I dropped the bomb here so it's out of the way for myself and the rest of the team. We've taken down the last pillar and are now on the home stretch. From here we just take Nex's remaining life points and that's the end of the kill. And that's it, easy clap. So all in all, we covered the basics of the boss, the gear, reqs, and rolls, and we broke down the encounter phase by phase. I'll include various links in the description for miscellaneous resources that may be useful at AoD. Feel free to leave any questions, feedback, or other ideas you'd like to see covered in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and if you found this video useful, please leave a like and subscribe. Also check out my Twitch at rs_aguni. I stream there multiple days a week and would love to see you guys there. Good luck, and until next time.
Jellies, next with jellies, please.
We didn't do double, that was my fault, I was just stuck in it.
We didn't do double, that was my fault, I was just stuck in it. Yep.